Pride of Detroit PODcast. It's training camp time. It's training camp time. Camp time. Yes. Crack those cold ones. Ha 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 ha. Let's start with the offense where, hey, I don't think any starting jobs are up for grabs, Jeremy.
Yeah. As we said at the bottom of last segment, it's kind of an interesting situation where we pretty much know everyone. Like, we know the starting quarterback. We know starting running backs. We know TE1. We know wide receivers. Probably 1 through 5, honestly, depending on what you think of Jameson Williams' availability. We know the starting offensive line. To everybody, like, we know all that, so it's just about depth battles. And I know you love depth battles, Chris. And we're gonna get into them.
I love depth battles. I love depth. I love the way you act with backup quarterbacks. How you disregard backup quarterbacks. You know what that is, Jeremy? That's depth. That's depth.
You want me to talk Blau versus Boyle right now? I'll get into it.
Let's go. Let's tear this Band-Aid off right now. Let's go, baby. Bring the balls out. Let's go. Boyle versus Blau. You want to keep both? Are we going to go 3 quarterbacks like we did last year? Is that what we're going to go?
I think it's time to move on from that strategy. I really do. I think part of it was COVID related. I think part of it was, well, we want to have a veteran in there like Blau, but we also want to see what Boyle has to kind of have a young developmental option. Well, if Boyle doesn't show that he's a developmental option, I think you can just run with Goff and Blau. Of course, if Boyle does improve a bunch, then maybe it becomes more of a conversation. But at this point, like, how important is it to have both of those guys when you're not really sure that either of them can come in and win you football games? And plus, now you got JT Barrett. There's your quarterback in the quarterback room that can teach you stuff.
I don't think they're bringing JT out of the back room for that.
Well, I mean, he's probably going to be with the quarterback, so you imagine, right? Like, he's going to be that kind of coach quarterback guy. So if that's what Blau's here for, well, maybe you like what JT Barrett has to offer instead in that role. I don't know. That's mostly silliness, but I don't know. I'm all in the keeping 2 QBs this year because I don't think it's necessary to keep 3.
Yeah, I'm fine with keeping 2 as long as they keep Tom Kennedy for an emergency quarterback. So they got to find a way to put Kennedy on the roster.
We did do our bubble watches, and Kennedy was out on. Was he in on? No, nobody, including Ryan, had him inside the bubble.
Right, which is why I went 3 quarterbacks.
That's true. That is true. I went 3 quarterbacks as well.
Convince me.
Well, that's what training camp's for, Tom Kennedy.
I mean, convince me to keep 3 quarterbacks.
I think just from the standpoint of, I don't know, if stuff really hits the fan with Goff, injury problems in his last year in Los Angeles. I mean, he had a healthy year last year, but like, I think that there's just part of me that thinks that this coaching staff wants the 3 quarterbacks, but I totally see your point too with the COVID stuff. Maybe it's strategy to go 2 quarterbacks, but I don't know.
I think there's no simple solution to go down to 2 quarterbacks because Blau really knows the book, but Blau cannot throw at all. Boyle has an erratic cannon of an arm, and I see the developmental there, but it's clearly that he's not close to Boyle when it comes to knowing the system in and out as far as, running the offense. I think Boyle is closer. If they're going to take only one of the 2, I actually lean Boyle. I think that the upside on Boyle is still like they will want to hold on to it because Boyle at least offers you traits and abilities that Blau just will not have at any point. So, but I don't think either one is a great fit to make that prototypical backup that would allow for a 2 quarterback system. So I think they're going to roll with 3. And also, like Ryan says, I think injury concerns for Goff is probably something to keep in mind.
I just think go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think if they keep 2 quarterbacks, I'm more inclined to think it's going to be Blau than it is going to be Boyle.
That's kind of the way I'm leaning too, because I'm of the belief that neither of these guys are going to win you football games, probably ever.
Agreed.
And so why not have the more coaching guy there to help Jared Goff most of the season?
I just wonder if they think that they might have something with Boyle, and
I think they do. Yeah.
And if that's the case, then like Chris mentioned, I think you want to have the clipboard holder as Blau as number 3 if you want to have the luxury of developing a quarterback like Boyle. So
to me, I look at the rest of the roster and I see so many other players that are going to be on this roster bubble that are worthy of that roster spot more so than one of these quarterbacks.
And we'll get there after we're done talking about backup quarterbacks for 10 minutes.
I think I'm ready to move on from backup quarterbacks.
Let's do it.
I don't want to even talk about the Goff hype continue. I feel like we've been talking about the Goff hype all
season.
It's
just the big storyline. Like, can Goff live up to kind of the expectations that are starting? Like, the expectations are starting to build on this guy, right?
Maybe we can maybe talk about it another week. I guess as the hype is growing, I am shying away from the hype.
Back. Yeah.
Because it was just a few games at the end of the year.
Sure.
Like it's hard to chart that
small sample
versus
size.
The overall. Yes. Yeah. It's my least favorite sample size. You don't like small platters. You don't like small sample sizes. Let's move on and talk about the running backs though. So once again, RB1 goes to DeAndre Swift, but this is a big year for questions about how much DeAndre Swift will contribute. He has not really been all 3 downs as a running back. He averages well, but he just doesn't play all 3 downs. And I think that really, look, it's going to be Jamal Williams there, but it is going to make depth at running back a concern. It's going to be, it's going to make holding 3 running backs, who the third running back is, very important in the question of maybe carrying 4 as well.
Yeah, I mean,
not including a fullback.
Health has always been a concern there, and yeah, I feel like we tell all about how it's Jared Goff's pivotal year all the time. It's very much DeAndre Swift's pivotal year as well, to stay healthy, to kind of reach that level. I mean, we were talking about it last week. Like, he's considered a top 10 running back by some people, and yeah, maybe that's a fantasy spin to it, but like,
I think it is a fantasy thing. It's definitely PPR.
I think there are people that think that he's knocking on the door of that anyways, and maybe not because of anything that he's proven yet, but because of the potential that's there. And so he's got a good offensive line. He's potentially has a good passing game. Like, no excuses there. But I think you're right. Like, because of the injury concerns, because we know that the Lions like to share the load when it comes to running back, these RB3, RB4 battles, they're not insignificant. These guys are going to get some playing time. They certainly did last year, and it's going to happen again. And I'm not saying like DeAndre Swift is about to get injured and all that, but it just happens. You cycle through your running backs every year. That's how this league works.
Yeah. I think to that point too, though, like, let's consider where Campbell came from. Let's consider where Holmes came from. And I think that just the cautionary tale about putting all your eggs in one basket when it comes to running backs is like, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Like, look at
Todd
what
Gurley shaped basket.
Right. I mean, like, what happens when Todd Gurley goes down in Los Angeles? Like, it is a disaster. Right. Like, that team is not what it was, in the Super Bowl, that it was the entire year prior to that. So, like, you have that, and then you look at New Orleans, and 1-2 punch. It's Kamara and Ingram, and it's always about having more than just one guy who can be a 3-down back. So, like, I'm left wondering, what does a successful season for DeAndre Swift look like? Like, does he have to be that 3-down back? Like, does he just have to be more efficient?
I think looking like Kamara is probably. Was that?
Does he need to be more durable? Like, just I don't know. I don't know if there's like a number I can put on it. It's just like, he has to be better.
He's not going to be the feature. He's not going to be a workworkhorse back. Like, the Lions just aren't going to do that.
And I don't think they want him to be that, right? That's why they signed Jamal Williams.
Absolutely. But I think successful just it's staying healthy and being efficient.
You mentioned Alvin Kamara. I think that's kind of a good model for him to go for. Like, his receiving numbers are good. Like, I don't think he'll be used just. Kamara was very heavily used receiving. I think Swift, they want to use him a little more balanced, but
he was. And I think to that point, like, Kamara, when he was humming along, before he had a little bit of a down year last year, like, he was a very efficient runner. And I think that's what they want out of DeAndre Swift. Like, I think a successful DeAndre Swift season looks like 4.8, 4.9 yards per carry.
Right. Yeah.
So looking at the battle, then we know Swift is 1. We know Jamal is 2. I was curious about this because on the bubble, we were looking at the bubble stuff again. And, we had 3 running backs on the bubble watch for week 1, Jamar Jefferson, Craig Reynolds, Godwin, Igwebuike. I had Jefferson and Igwebuike in and Reynolds out. Ryan has only Reynolds in. So I'm curious how this is probably where the battle is going to break down. And it's a battle between, a couple of young guys, someone like Craig Reynolds, who came in and contributed decently last year, but I'm curious where you guys break down, because I think they liked what they had in Jamar Jefferson before the injury. Obviously, any injury is going to change you completely, but I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this running back battle.
It's tough. Part of it's tough because you don't get any sort of information out of spring camp. And for these first couple practices that are going to be unpadded in training camp, we're not going to get a lot of information. It is hard to judge how a running back is doing when you can't tackle the guy, because that's the one thing you need to do is not get tackled.
Shed tackles, yeah.
And listen, I think Igwebuike is the safest of the group only because of the special teams. He was the kick returner last year. He was 4th in the NFL in terms of kick return average, so he's good at it. He's not great. He's not breaking out long runs or anything like that, but he's dependable and good. And listen, that's the name of the game with kickoffs these days. You're not getting a lot of breakout plays. You just want a guy who can get you past the 25, not fumble the ball. That's what Igwebuike is. The problem was that he was fumbling the balls when he was running it, right? Like, that's something that people aren't going to forget, and certainly lines aren't going to forget it. And then when it comes down to the other two, Jamar Jefferson and Craig Reynolds, I think it's clear which one was better last year. Craig Reynolds was way better. He finished the season strong. He almost had back-to-back 100-yard games. So as a rusher, he's made a better case than Jamar Jefferson has. Jamar Jefferson was drafted by this team. They saw something in him. He didn't get a ton of chances last year. I think he only played in 3 or 4 games. So he's been saying all offseason, what has he been working on? The one thing that gets you on these teams when you're in the middle of in the middle of a camp battle, special teams. So I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to him and his special teams contributions, because that could be the make or break thing for him. And he needs to take a jump as a rusher too. So right now, I keep going back between Reynolds and Jamar, because I feel like Jamar's got more upside, but Reynolds gives it to you more right now. But it can go either way, and I don't really have a strong feeling anyway.
The reason I had Igwebuike out is because, Jeremy just highlighted like how important he is on special teams as a kick returner. I think that's replicable. Like, I think you can get that from a guy who maybe plays wide receiver. The one thing that isn't replicable, though, and is, to your point, Jeremy, about special teams, Igwebuike was 3rd on the team in special team snaps, playing on kick coverage, playing on punt return, playing on punt coverage. Like, he's playing like in all facets of special teams. So like, obviously a very important contributor there. So I don't know, I think this is an interesting battle to keep an eye on, just because like one of these guys is likely going to be called on to play running back at some point during the season.
Yep.
Moving on to tight ends. We talked about it a little bit. I have no clue who's going to be tight end 2 at this point. And I think a lot of that is because of James Mitchell starting the year.
He was injured. He's still in the present. He's still wrapped in the box. We don't know what the Lions have in him. Obviously, you draft him in the 5th round. You kind of expect him to make the team. So he'll make the team.
Lions picked up a lot of tight ends to fill this room too.
Right.
There's a lot of competition, more at 3 than 2, but 2's up for grabs as well.
Yeah, it's all, you throw them all in there, and they probably keep 3, maybe a 4th, but certainly at least 3. And listen, like, if you're, the thing is, like, are you relying on James Mitchell to be your TE2 right out the gate? Like, this is a guy who didn't play at all last year. He got injured very early in the season. So you're talking about a guy who essentially hasn't played a season of football in 2 years. And tight end is a pretty notorious position to take some time to adjust to the NFL. So maybe, is it Brock Wright? Like, a guy who they spoke very highly of the way he finished the season in terms of, he was an undrafted rookie who came in and was thrown to the Wolves and did okay. And he's kind of a more balanced guy. But is he ready to be that full-time tight end too?
I think it is Brock Wright. And like, I think that spells bad news for the rest of this room, because I don't see a scenario where they carry four tight ends. Like, they'll carry James Mitchell, they'll carry TJ, and then whoever the tight end 2, and that's Brock Wright. So like, but you've also got in that room Garrett Griffin, Shane Zylstra, Devin Funchess. Like, I can't see the case to carry any of those guys if they don't beat Brock Wright.
I don't think that there is a single path that leads to Devin Funchess being on this football team.
Really? No path
Sorry,
at
Michigan
all. This
fans.
is a guy who had 800 yards and 8 touchdowns in a season. That can't even challenge a Brock Wright.
So
that was a long time.
No, like, here's the thing though. Like, I think that if you're that far down on the tight end depth chart, you better be a pretty adept dude at doing all sorts of things. And I think that
that's fair.
His one calling card is he can be a big receiver. That's cool. The Lions have a ton of those dudes. They have a ton of those big body guys that they can play in the slot, whether it's Hawkinson. I mean, not a big body guy, but Amon-Ra. And we're going to get to the wide receivers. And one of those guys is Quintez Cephas.
The only thing I would say in defense of Devin Funchess, because I don't think he's going to make the team, but I'm also not counting him out. And it's for a very simple reason.
Ann Arbor.
They signed him. Period. They looked at their
true.
guys in OTAs and minicamp, and they decided at the end of it, we need another tight end to challenge this group. He's going to get a shot.
I mean, it also doesn't hurt. Right. I agree. I just don't think that there's a path to him getting on the roster because of his skill set.
Ann Arbor, get out of here.
Call a spade, man. Let's talk
Listen,
about
man,
wideouts.
so many Lions fans very mad about JT Barrett joining the coaching staff.
Very
Like,
silly.
you can't tell me that that bias isn't around this fan base sometimes.
I mean, just had to bring him in for short yardage situations.
Let's move to wide receivers.
didn't
Like
get
we were
it.
talking.
Sorry.
Wide receivers. This is fascinating because there are just so many of them, but there's so many on. I will go out and say it like it's going to be it would be the weirdest world possible if Tom Kennedy made this roster, unless again they like him as a quarterback, as Ryan was talking about. But we've been talking about Trinity Benson and Quintez Cephas on the bubble, and I feel like those two are going to have to battle for a spot with each other. And that's pretty much, is that the only thing that is in your mind, Jeremy, that's up for debate for the wide receiver squad?
I mean, it's tough because it might not even be up for debate, because if Jameson Williams goes on NFI, regular season, that means there are only 4 spots that are locked in. Amon-Ra, DJ Chark, Josh Reynolds, Khalif
But
Raymond.
one of those guys is probably going to get cut when JMO comes back.
Correct.
Or move down to
yes, they won't
practice
keep
squad.
7, but they very well could keep 6. And if JMO's not on the roster, well, then there's enough room for Quintez Cephas and Trinity Benson. And that's, to me, right now, that's the most likely scenario. All 6 of those guys make it. Jameson Williams is on the NFI. And then the rest of your guys are cut on the practice squad. Those guys being Tom Kennedy, the local favorite Khalil Pimpleton, Corey Sutton, and Josh Johnson. Basically, Tom Kennedy and a bunch of UDFAs. But yeah, like I don't actually see there being much of an interesting battle here. I think the intrigue here is just like, okay, how good are these guys actually going to be?
Yeah, I was always after the Chark signing and bringing back Reynolds, and obviously how well Amon-Ra played in the slot. Like, I thought it would be really difficult for Quintez Cephas to find a way onto this roster because, I mean, his role is kind of be the big body dude,
Right.
And whether that's outside or whether that's in the slot. And I mean, Chark, they might play him in the slot a little bit too.
Yeah.
And that's why and they talked up Trinity Benson so much, right? And they talked up, special teams acumen and all those things. I guess the only question is, you said Khalif Raymond, his contract pretty much puts him on the roster, right?
Yep.
Like,
Cost more if you cut him.
right. So yeah, I think I'm with you in terms of the numbers, and what it really boils down to is how ready is JMO? And if he isn't ready, then you're going to get one of those
You're kind of set.
UFA guys. Yeah.
And that's the interesting part. Like, everyone wants to talk Khalil Pimpleton. I just I get the excitement. He's a fast dude. He's a local guy. He's gonna make it to the practice squad. All right, everyone relax. He's not gonna get swapped up if the Lions cut him. But there's not a spot. Like, the only way he wins a spot is as a returner, and that would mean moving Khalif Raymond out of the spot, and he's not going anywhere. They love Khalif Raymond.
Can you? I know he's not Pimpleton. He's not local, but I am in love. I've been in love with Corey Sutton. Is there any chance he makes the practice squad?
Sure, practice squad. Yeah, like I think.
Yeah. That's what I.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see him making this roster.
Yeah, no,
but
yeah,
I love what he did at App State. That's all.
I don't like that school.
I know you don't.
This has been quite the segment for Jeremy as a Michigan fan. Speaking of Michigan,
yeah, let's talk about it. So the big battle, I feel like we're almost dipping into the Michigan side, but we'll tie it together on both sides of the break. It's all 5 offensive line. They're finally together. They're all healthy. And I know Jeremy is really excited to see Sewell facing off against Hutchinson.
It's
what he wants.
It's all I want to
see.
see.
Battle.
Like, anytime those two are lined up against each other, I like the rest of the field is going to go white for me. It's just going to be them in a silhouette. I'm just watching them because
he's doing like an anime, like
Yeah.
Jamal would like that, an anime,
Yes.
like an anime square off, like them alone together
yes,
in null space,
lines flying off their bodies, and yeah,
Rah.
it's just like because Panay was already talking trash before the pads were on in the middle of OTAs. Tells me all I need to know about this matchup. It's going to be super fun. We might not get it right away because Aiden might have to work his way up the lineup, although with Romeo out and Pascal out, maybe not. But yeah, it's going to be super fun. I can't wait.
Let me ask a question. Let me ask a question to you guys. And it might be crazy, and you can say I'm crazy, but is there any chance at all, looking at the outside, we're going to get to the interior second, is there any chance at all the Lions might look at Decker and Sewell
And swap them?
Well, is there any chance, I guess I'm asking that, is there any chance for Sewell to play himself into consideration that, like, I'm better at left tackle? Is there anything at all, or is Decker just, he's the veteran, he's going to be left tackle?
You want to take that, Ryan?
I don't think there's any chance.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Either. I think they made it pretty clear last year, right? Like, and there's no reason to change it because it was working extremely well towards the end.
It was working, yes.
Like
yes.
everyone was saying, you got to put Panay on the left. You got to put Panay on the left, and then he is forced to go on the left, and he struggles. He slides back to right, and you're like, oh shit, he's pretty good over there. Let's just keep him there. Decker's doing great too. Like, I'm starting up, like everyone calls him. I'm the conductor of the Jeff Okuda hype train, but I'm starting to like be the conductor of the don't forget about Taylor Decker being actually really good at his job train.
Okay.
I'm working on the name.
Yeah. Ryan, looking at the interior of the line, are you buying into Logan Stenberg? It says on my notes here, hype.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that hype is founded. But
I think Jeremy wrote this, but yeah.
No, I get it. Like, I think that Logan Stenberg continues to be this darling of sorts because of, I think, the caricature of himself when he was drafted, right? Like, there was this idea that, like, he's this mean, nasty guard who, like, especially where he was drafted, I think 4th round pick, right? Like, I think Stenberg, 4th round pick, like, that's usually an area in which you can get a starter in the NFL draft. So, like, I think there was a lot of promise with Stenberg, but there hasn't been a lot on the field that suggested this guy should be, a dependable player along the interior of the offensive line. Because one of the most important things that I think we, commonly talk about is like the interchangeability of those spots. And, even the ability to play center, which
he can.
Jeremy, can you, I was like, can you remind everybody Logan Stenberg's brief career at center for us?
Not great, Bob.
Yeah. I mean,
and like you have guys like Evan Brown, 100% going to be on the roster just because can play center, can play guard. Tommy Kramer is a guy who actually played last year and was, serviceable. I mean, like, he's not a guy that you want out there. Like, you don't want Matt Nelson playing tackle. But, by the same point, I think that they're kind of set up there. I think Stenberg really has to have a good camp. In order for him to have a spot on the roster.
I would think Tommy Kramer starts camp ahead of him on the depth chart, but I would not say that's solidly in stone. Like, we got to remember, Tommy Kramer was a UDFA last year too, and yeah, he played a lot. I wouldn't say very good, but he was forced into the situation. But those are valuable snaps, right? Those are valuable learning experience. Logan doesn't have any of that. He has 4 offensive snaps, period, in 2 years.
Right. And Evan Brown got all those snaps for Frank Ragnow last year.
Yep.
Like, so right. He has a lot of guys who haven't been in the league necessarily longer than him, but like have way more experience.
Yeah, and he was dealing with an injury last year, so I don't know if it was like Evan Brown was just a better player than him, but obviously at center he is.
Still, but it's Ryan's favorite ability.
Right. And so Logan's going to have to stay healthy, and he's going to have to prove a lot, but like there were promising signs in the spring. The fact that he was pushed into the starting lineup when Jonah was out for a day, they're at least giving him the opportunities to win the job, and who knows if he can do it. We don't know anything about how well he plays, but he's kind of one of the more intriguing guys on the offensive line that I'll be paying attention to.